What is AWS GuardDuty? First off, a simple definition. GuardDuty is like a guard that would stand in front of your AWS workload and continuously monitor and let you know of any threats that are coming towards your workload. The real definition states Amazon GuardDuty offers threat detection, enabling you to continuously monitor and protect your AWS accounts, workloads, and data stored in AWS S3. GuardDuty analyzes continuous metadata streams generated from your account and network activity found in CloudTrail events, VPC flow logs, and DNS logs. GuardDuty also uses integrated threat intelligence such as non malicious IP addresses, anomaly detection, and machine learning to accurately identify threats. Features of AWS GuardDuty: Amazon S3 protection, where it will monitor object level suspicious activity happening in your S3 buckets. EKS protection, where it monitors suspicious activities on EKS clusters. Runtime monitoring. This uses an agent and monitors suspicious activities happening on ECS Fargate, EKS, or EC2. The difference between the other protection is that this uses an agent and keeps on checking what's happening at runtime. Malware protection. This will scan EBS volumes to check for any malware. RDS protection. Currently, this is supported only for Aurora and it scans any kind of login activity happening on the Aurora. Lambda protection scans all the network traffic that is happening from the Lambda execution and lets you know of any suspicious incidents. Suppression rules. If you have some findings that you think are unexpected behavior for your workload, you can create suppression rules to suppress these findings. This would archive findings which are of low value or false positives and reduce the noise. Threat lists and trusted lists. Threat list is a list of non-malicious IPs. This could be in many formats, including industry standard formats like sticks, OTX, or even plain text. Lists could be stored at an accessible internet URI, including your own S3 bucket. Trusted list contains the non-trusted IPs with the same storage and format schemes. AWS GuardDuty generates findings for any security incident that it finds on your AWS workload and gives you a whole lot of details to help understand what's happening. Here is a new feature that allows you to continuously scan your S3 buckets for any malware. And now it is time for a demo of GuardDuty functionalities. As we saw in the list management functionality, we can upload IP addresses which are known to be malicious. So here I have a S3 bucket file which contains some IP addresses that we consider as malicious. These are not really malicious IPs, it's just for a demo. So I have the IP address 8.8.8.8, which is a well-known DNS server. Now I'll log into one of the EC2 instances in my environment and try to ping that IP from it. Now we are in the EC2 instance and I'm going to ping this IP continuously for some time. This will generate some findings in the GuardDuty console. Now it will do something called EC2 credential exfiltration. As you know, the EC2 instance can have an IAM profile, and we are running a curl command on the EC2 instance metadata URL and get the access key ID, secret access key, and a token that will allow us to duplicate the same session from a different machine. Now I will run the AWS configure command with this access key ID, the secret access key, and this token, and make this as the default profile. Now I have impersonated the EC2 instance profile from a machine that's not in the AWS, and I can run any AWS commands that I want to run. As you can see, I am able to run AWS S3 LS to list the buckets. This is because the IAM profile that's given to the EC2 instance has S3 bucket read-only access. Now we will look at a lambda, bad lambda pi, which does some suspicious things. Namely, it accesses one of the IPs that have been mentioned in the suspicious IPs thread list. I will use the function URL of this lambda to invoke this lambda a number of times. Now let's look at the findings that have been generated by this demo. This is the malicious IP caller. This was generated by us going into the EC2 instance and pinging that malicious IP multiple times. And this is the one generated by the credential exfiltration. As you can see, it gives details like the IAM profile that was used for that, where this action originated from, what internet provider is used by the attacker. All these details are given here. Here is the malicious IP caller from the lambda that we ran, and it accessed a malicious non IP, and it gives the details likewise. And this one here, this is actually a real attack that has been happening on the EC2 instance. Somebody seems to be trying to brute force SSH into one of the EC2 instances I have. If you would like to replicate this demo in your own environment, you can click this QR code and get the instructions and the code. Now let's look at AWS Detective. In any of the findings in GuardDuty, there's an option to investigate with Detective. When you select the Investigate with Detective option, you can choose to investigate the GuardDuty finding, the IP that is involved in the finding, or the lambda that is causing the incident. I will take this exfiltration finding and go to the GuardDuty finding investigation in Detective. AWS Detective Service helps you to analyze security issues. It automatically collects and analyzes security logs like VPC flow log, CloudTrail, and GuardDuty results, and utilizes machine learning, graph theory, and visualization to help in RCA or root cause analysis. You can answer questions like, how did the security incident happen? Where was the first intrusion? And how to prevent such incidents in future. Amazon Detective requires that you have Amazon GuardDuty already enabled on your accounts for at least 48 hours before you enable Detective on those accounts. Findings are sent from GuardDuty to Detective every 6 hours by default, but this can be changed to be as fast as every 15 minutes. It takes up to 2 weeks of data to build a historical baseline. Automatically created finding groups are the core feature of Detective. AWS Detective groups findings from various services together based on incidents so that you can see the related findings in one place. It shows severity, entity affected, MITRE tactic used, etc. The group is constructed as a graph that allows you to see the relation between various incidents that occurred. By default, the graph visualization is force directed, but you can manipulate the graph to get more details or different visualizations. Here we are looking at the incident of communications with the malicious IP and credential exfiltration from that same EC2 instance. So it shows that this is happening from the same EC2 instance and what AWS role was used for this exfiltration. It shows the entities that were involved in that, the IAM AWS role, the EC2 instance. It shows the priority of this incident. We can also see the observed MITRE tactics. Here it is using command and control where the adversary is trying to communicate with a compromised system and trying to control it. When you run an investigation in AWS Detective, it looks at all the data that has been gathered so far and creates a report of all the related and relevant data. This can be used then by the security analyst to find out details on how the incident occurred. Example, for a day with many failed API calls with a brute force SSH, and what are the remediation actions that can be taken, like isolate the EC2 instance, revoke the sessions, rotate the keys, etc. You can use the powerful search function to find out more details. For example, here the failed API calls that are happening. Security analysts can then find the details of the mappings to the tactics, techniques, and procedures framework. All TTPs are classified according to their severity. The console shows the techniques and actions used. By selecting a specific TTP, they can select the details in the right pane. Once the analyst has enough information about the incident, they can take the remediation steps. AWS detective investigations can find out indicators of compromised security, for example, the impossible travel found here. Impossible travel means that the user has connected to the system from two different geographical locations that are so far apart that it should be impossible. If your account is part of an AWS organization, you will find the enabled member accounts here who have detective enabled. Detective can be integrated with Security Lake if you have AWS organization and get all your security logs ingested into the Security Lake. This concludes my introduction to AWS GuardDuty and Detective. Hope this was helpful. Thank you.